The relationship between Japan and South Korea is complex, marked by a tumultuous past. This intricate history is filled with moments of conflict, cultural suppression, and a struggle for identity that has left lasting scars on both nations. From 1910 to 1945, Korea endured a period of Japanese colonial rule. This era was not just a political takeover, but a profound cultural and social upheaval that affected every aspect of Korean life. This era witnessed the systematic suppression of Korean culture and identity. Japanese authorities sought to erase Korean traditions, replacing them with their own customs and practices. Japan imposed its language, education system, and even names on the Korean people. Korean children were forced to attend Japanese schools, where they were taught to speak Japanese and adopt Japanese customs. Forced labor and land expropriation were commonplace, leaving deep scars on Korean society. Many Koreans were coerced into working in harsh conditions, often far from their homes, while their lands were seized for Japanese use. This period remains a source of immense pain and resentment in South Korea. The memories of those who lived through these times are preserved in memorials and through the stories passed down to younger generations. The impact of Japanese colonialism went far beyond economic exploitation. It was a multifaceted assault on Korean society, affecting the economy, culture, and the very fabric of daily life. It was a systematic attempt to erase Korean identity and assimilate the population into Japanese culture. This cultural imposition was a deliberate strategy to weaken Korean resistance and ensure Japanese dominance. Traditional Korean practices were banned, and the use of the Korean language was discouraged. Korean history and literature were removed from the curriculum, replaced by Japanese texts that glorified the empire. This period sowed the seeds of mistrust and animosity that continue to plague the relationship between the two nations. The legacy of colonialism is still felt today, influencing diplomatic and social interactions. Despite facing harsh oppression, the Korean people never surrendered their desire for independence. The spirit of resistance was kept alive through underground movements and public demonstrations. Numerous resistance movements emerged during this time, fighting for liberation. These groups, often operating in secrecy, played a crucial role in keeping the hope of freedom alive. These movements were met with brutal suppression by Japanese authorities. Many activists were arrested, tortured, and even executed, but their sacrifices were not in vain. The memory of this struggle for freedom remains deeply ingrained in the South Korean psyche. Today, South Korea honors the bravery and resilience of those who fought for their nation's independence, ensuring that their legacy continues to inspire future generations. One of the most significant events during this tumultuous period was the March 1st movement of 1919. This nationwide uprising was a pivotal moment in the Korean independence movement. It was a peaceful demonstration of the Korean people's yearning for freedom and self-determination. Inspired by the principles of self-determination espoused in Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, Koreans took to the streets in peaceful protest. The movement was met with a brutal crackdown by the Japanese authorities. Thousands of Koreans were killed, injured, or imprisoned. The March 1st movement, despite its tragic end, had a profound impact. It galvanized Korean national identity and fueled the fight for independence. The movement also resonated internationally, drawing attention to Japan's harsh colonial policies. It became a symbol of Korean resistance and a rallying cry for independence. The spirit of the March 1st movement continues to inspire South Koreans today. Following World War II, Korea finally achieved liberation from Japanese rule in 1945. This momentous occasion was marked by jubilant celebrations across the peninsula, as people rejoiced in their newfound freedom after decades of oppressive colonial rule. The streets were filled with the sounds of cheering and the sight of flags waving proudly in the air. However, the joy of liberation was short-lived. The initial euphoria quickly gave way to uncertainty and fear as the reality of the geopolitical situation set in. The Korean people, who had longed for unity and independence, were now faced with a new and unexpected challenge. The Korean peninsula was divided along the 38th parallel, with the Soviet Union administering the north and the United States administering the south. This division was not just a line on a map, it represented a deep ideological rift between communism and capitalism, setting the stage for future conflicts. This division, a product of Cold War politics, had profound consequences for the Korean people. Families were torn apart, communities were divided, and a sense of national unity was shattered. The once cohesive society now found itself split into two opposing camps, each influenced by their respective superpower patrons. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, further solidified this division. The conflict was brutal and devastating, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The war left an indelible mark on the Korean peninsula, entrenching the division and making reconciliation seem increasingly unlikely. The war, a proxy conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, resulted in the deaths of millions of Koreans. The destruction was widespread, with cities and villages reduced to rubble. The human cost was immense, with countless lives lost, and many more forever altered by the trauma of war. It left the peninsula physically and ideologically divided. The establishment of the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, became a stark symbol of this division, a heavily fortified border that separated families and friends. The DMZ remains one of the most heavily militarized borders in the world, a constant reminder of the unresolved conflict. The war also had a devastating impact on the relationship between Japan and South Korea. Historical grievances resurfaced, and the scars of Japanese colonial rule were reopened. South Koreans, who had suffered under Japanese occupation, now viewed Japan with renewed suspicion and resentment. While Japan did not directly participate in the war, it benefited economically from the conflict. The Korean War provided a significant boost to Japan's economy, as the country became a key supplier of goods and services to the United States military. This economic windfall helped Japan recover from the devastation of World War II. The United States, seeking to bolster its allies in the region, infused Japan with economic aid and contracts. This support was crucial in helping Japan rebuild its shattered economy and lay the foundation for its future economic success. The US-Japan alliance grew stronger, further complicating the regional dynamics. This economic boost helped Japan rebuild its post-war economy. The rapid industrial growth and modernization transformed Japan into an economic powerhouse, setting the stage for its emergence as a leading global economy in the decades to come. However, it also fueled resentment in South Korea, which felt betrayed by its former colonizers' prosperity. The economic disparity between the two nations became a source of tension, as South Koreans struggled to rebuild their own war-torn country while witnessing Japan's rapid recovery. This resentment would continue to shape the complex relationship between the two nations for years to come. In 1965, under pressure from the United States, Japan and South Korea signed the Treaty on Basic Relations. This treaty was a significant milestone, marking the first time the two nations had formally established diplomatic ties since the end of World War II. The agreement was seen as a crucial step towards regional stability and economic cooperation in East Asia. This treaty normalized diplomatic relations between the two countries, paving the way for economic and political collaboration. It was hoped that this would lead to a new era of mutual understanding and partnership. However, it failed to fully address the legacy of Japanese colonialism, particularly the issue of individual compensation for forced labor victims. The scars of the past were deep, and many Koreans felt that the treaty did not go far enough in acknowledging and rectifying the injustices they had suffered. The treaty has been a source of controversy ever since. Many South Koreans have protested against what they see as an inadequate settlement, arguing that the lump sum payments made to the South Korean government did not translate into proper compensation for individual victims. The treaty provided for lump sum payments to South Korea, which were intended to cover economic assistance and claim settlement. These funds were used to fuel South Korea's rapid economic development, but the distribution of these funds has been a point of contention. However, the issue of individual compensation for forced labor victims was not explicitly addressed. This omission has left many victims and their families feeling neglected and unheard. This omission has been a major sticking point in relations between the two countries. The unresolved grievances have fueled ongoing legal battles and diplomatic tensions. South Korea argues that the 1965 treaty did not absolve Japan of its responsibility to provide individual compensation. They believe that justice for the victims requires direct acknowledgement and reparations from Japan. They maintain that the issue of individual rights was not part of the treaty negotiations. South Korean officials have repeatedly called for Japan to address these historical injustices in a more comprehensive manner. Japan, on the other hand, contends that the treaty settled all claims, including those of individual victims. Japanese officials argue that the financial aid provided under the treaty was meant to cover all wartime compensation issues. This fundamental disagreement continues to cast a shadow over the relationship. Despite efforts to move forward, the unresolved issues from the past remain a significant barrier to true reconciliation and mutual trust between Japan and South Korea. The forced labor dispute between Japan and South Korea has its roots in the early 20th century. During Japan's colonization of Korea, many Koreans were conscripted into labor against their will. This dark chapter has left a lasting impact on the relations between the two nations. Even today, survivors and their descendants seek justice and reparations. The issue remains a significant point of contention, with ongoing legal battles and diplomatic tensions. Understanding this dispute is crucial to comprehending the broader historical and political dynamics between Japan and South Korea. In recent years, the historical rift between Japan and South Korea has manifested in modern ways. Trade disputes, military standoffs, and political disagreements have all played a part in deepening the mistrust. Both nations find themselves in a complex web of historical grievances and contemporary challenges. Diplomatic efforts to resolve these tensions have often reached a deadlock. The inability to find common ground has not only strained bilateral relations but also contributed to regional instability. This diplomatic impasse often leaves both countries in a state of heightened alert, impacting their alliances and strategic decisions. Both Japan and South Korea walk a tightrope, trying to balance national interests with the need for regional cooperation. The stakes are high, as any misstep could escalate tensions further. Leaders from both nations are constantly navigating this delicate balance, aware that their decisions have far-reaching implications. The path to reconciliation is long and fraught with challenges. However, there is hope. Through dialogue, mutual understanding, and a willingness to confront the past, Japan and South Korea can work towards a future where mistrust is replaced by cooperation. The journey is difficult but not impossible.